All right, folks. We are having some technical difficulty. It looks like it was delayed and we were seeing it and we weren't. So if you could just give us another minute here. Thank you so much for your patience. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your patience. Good afternoon. My name is Meeta Jan Patel. I am a member of the Independent Voters for D86, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Independent Voters for D86's second D86 Board of Education Candidate Forum. This event is being live streamed on our YouTube channel for the very first time. This is our first time holding an event virtually, so we thank you in advance for your patience should we experience any technical difficulties. You can see that we're on a 3-minute delay and our candidates have been patiently sitting, waiting to go ahead and begin. We would like to start by thanking the volunteers who helped make today possible. Sona Bunsel, Gail Dianis, Joe and Michelle Foley, Catherine Johnson, and Neetha Tavel. The goal for Independent Voters for D86 is to provide an opportunity for the D86 community to get to know the candidates running and to learn what they will bring to the Board of Education and District 86 if elected. We are hosting this event today to inform voters in advance of early voting. Early voting will begin on February 25th. Election day is on April 6th. We request that you please see DuPage County and Cook County Election Commission websites for details on your polling locations. We would like to thank all 10 candidates for running to serve on the District 86 Board of Education. Today we have 9 candidates with us. In alphabetical order, I'll introduce Justin Barron, TJ Edwards, Peggy James, Debbie Leventhal, Mark Pinow, Karen Shannon, Marty Turek, Terry Walker, and Jeff Waters. We've taken a few minutes before starting this event to review the format with our candidates. During this event, the candidates will remain muted until they are asked to speak, at which time they will unmute themselves. Throughout the event, they will have their cameras on, and we will be alternating between gallery and speaker view on our end. On live stream, you will see the candidates as presented. In brief summary of our format today, we will have opening statements from each candidate for a total of 2 minutes, a lightning round of yes or no questions, a series of 9 substantive questions that were based on community submissions, and we will end with closing statements from each candidate for a total of 90 seconds each. So we'll go ahead and begin now with our candidate 2-minute opening statement. We will start in alphabetical order with Mr. Barron. Justin, if you could please go ahead and unmute yourself. You will have 2 minutes to speak. I'll give you a 15-second warning. And at the 2-minute mark, we'll go ahead and move on to the next candidate. Your time begins now.
Yes, I would like to just to first off thank you, Meetha, for hosting, and Independent Voters for District 86 for putting this event together. And, I just want to start off by introducing myself. The patch in their December 21st article said there was no information available for me. So I hope to change that today. I live in Darien. I graduated from Hinsdale South in May of 2017, and I graduated from Lewis University with a bachelor's in finance and economics, and I just graduated this past month. And the reason I am in this race is because bad board policies personally affected both me and my family during my time at South, and my brother and all my friends. Mainly, the event that really started it for me was back in the fall of 2016 during the teachers union was hours away from going on strike, and that event forced me to become informed. And since then, I've just had this drive to learn more and more about the district and the community, the things that are happening. And that led me to where I am here right now with all you guys and speaking and making sure my voice is heard. And to me, that's very important. And I hope to get my name out there.
15 seconds.
I hope to get my name out there and inform the community of what I want to do for them.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that opening statement, Justin Barron. We will move on to our next candidate, TJ Edwards. If you could please go ahead and unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak and your time begins now.
Good afternoon. Thank you, independent voters, for D86 for hosting this candidate forum, providing me an opportunity to introduce myself to the district. For those watching that don't know about me, I am Tamakia Edwards. I go by TJ. I'm a wife and a mother of 3 sons, and I live in Darien. I joined the board in August, and I served on a special facilities committee from September 2019 to September 2020. I joined the board right at a point where the semester was starting, and like everyone else, was under the impression that students would soon be fully back to in-person learning. Something very important to me, as my family experienced the early impacts of the pandemic having a spring 2020 senior at South. The impact of the pandemic caused our students to lose out on proms, graduations, the significant milestones that marked successful completion of high school. A successful basketball season at South was interrupted that left my senior and his teammates devastated and confused. Parents are having to balance working at home with their students, holidays via Zoom, college visits by drive-by, and as a mother of a remote 7th grader, I'm tired of cooking 15 meals a day. Overall, we are all exhausted and ready to get back to life pre-COVID. But as ready as we are, we have to be diligent and steadfast and continue to work together to responsibly return the students to full-time in-person learning. I'm a mission-driven professional. I work daily to build bridges between expectations and results by finding the nuance between what is requested, truly desired, and executable. Similar to my BOE role, this requires multiple skills. Finance, organization, strong interpersonal skills, and making trade-offs to maximize outputs. These types of experiences are helpful as I engage in my role as a board member for D86, because respecting different views and building consensus is the only way to ensure we are acting in the best interest of the students and community. I look forward to responding to questions today and providing insight into my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, TJ. We'll now move on to our next candidate, Peggy James. Thank you for unmuting yourself. Peggy, you've got 2 minutes. Your time begins now.
Thank you. And I would like to thank the independent voters for D86 for this opportunity. My name is Peggy James. I am a concerned parent that has been analyzing the issues facing our district, attending and participating in board meetings regularly over the years. I felt that my voice and the voices of many other parents in our community were not being heard. I believe that I can make a difference, and I'm excited to be running for the D86 Board of Education. As a resident of the district since 2004, and the parent of 4 former, current, and future D86 students, I am familiar with the many issues facing our current board and have a vested interest in the success of D86. My oldest graduated from Hinsdale Central last year and is now a college freshman. I have 2 current students, a senior and a freshman, and a 7th grader who will be coming soon. I understand firsthand the need for coherence between the D86 curriculum and those of its feeder districts, and the domino effect that changes to the D86 curriculum has on feeders. I graduated from Michigan State with a degree in communications and have since focused on data analytics and process improvement throughout my professional career. With a background rooted in communications, I understand how important it is for D86 to reflect the priorities and values of the communities it serves, and how an open and ongoing dialogue with stakeholders feeds into effective communication. On a personal level, I approach issues with an open mind and common sense. I will bring leadership with honesty, integrity, and transparency. I focus on the student-centered, data-driven decisions that have served many generations and continue to position D86 as a destination district for students and families in the western suburbs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. We'll move on to our next candidate, Debbie Leventhal. Debbie, if you could, oh, you've got yourself unmuted. Thank you so much, Debbie. Your time starts now.
Thank you. My name is Debbie Leventhal. I'm a Hinsdale resident and mother of 4 children, a current Hinsdale Central sophomore, a freshman, an 8th grader, and a kindergartner. After graduating with a degree in actuarial science from the University of Michigan, I abandoned my private sector aspirations and instead pivoted to my true passion, public education. I earned my MST in mathematics from the University of Illinois at Chicago and began my career as a high school math teacher. I spent over 13 years in the classroom at both Stevenson High School and New Trier High School. I've been called to action because I believe in public schools and their ability to ensure success for all students by providing opportunities for learning and meaningful supports. My professional background in education gives me an understanding of the complex challenges we currently face. I believe that our community deserves a voice in the direction of our district, and if elected, I will engage with stakeholders in respectful dialogue, hold the administration responsible for meeting the needs of all students, ensure a safe and inclusive culture in our buildings, and insist that we make data-driven decisions based on normed and objective standards that demonstrate an improvement in student outcomes. I firmly embrace the principles of open governance and the critical role the Board of Education plays as stewards of the district for the community. I look forward to hearing and considering different viewpoints, asking questions at the board table, and engaging in productive discourse with fellow board members. I also embrace the belief that public comment and input should be welcomed, listened to, and valued.
15 seconds.
I'm committed to our 4,000 plus students that attend both of our schools and will dedicate my time to ensuring they are offered the best possible high school experience, led by the best possible administration, taught by the best and brightest teachers, and supported by best practice services to meet their needs.
Thank you so much.
And their goals.
Thank you so much, Ms. Leventhal. We'll move on to Mark Pino. Mark, if you could please unmute yourself. Great. Your time starts now.
Great. Thank you, Mita, and the Foleys and everybody at who's helped put everything on today. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Pino. I am a resident of Willowbrook, and my family has been lived in the area for the past 14 years. Currently, I have 2 children in the district, a sophomore at Hinsdale South, and I have an 8th grader at Gower Middle School. I live in the Hinsdale Central attendance area. However, my wife and I have made the decision to send our children to South. The reason I'm running for the board is I believe that the schools in our area are the cornerstone of our community, and I believe that the academic excellence that we have come to rely on is something that's really important to not only maintain but also strengthen and further going forward. I'm a person who I look at the issues that are facing the board today, and I see those as challenges that are opportunities for us, opportunities to do better, opportunities to do things that we're not doing today. And I see those all as honestly, I see those all as positives. I think the things that are in front of us, given the environment that we're in, we have the ability to 4 years from now have a better district than we have today. I believe that as far as the issues relating to the curriculum change, relating to the communication, openness with the board, we all need to do a better job, and we need to all do that more effectively than we do currently. As far as my personal background, I am accounting and finance, and I also have extensive experience in project management, systems implementation, as well as data analysis. And I consider myself to be a very pragmatic and data-driven person. And I hope to use this experience to bring to the board to assist with the decisions that are facing us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. We'll move on to our next candidate, Karen Shannon. Karen, if you could just unmute yourself. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and your 2 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Mita. My name is Karen Shannon. I have 2 daughters in the district, one who recently graduated and a junior at Hinsdale Central. I hold a PhD in chemistry from Caltech, a JD from Georgetown Law Center, and I am currently the Vice President of Intellectual Property for a global medical diagnostic company. I am running for the board because I am concerned over recent board decisions relating both to learning during the pandemic, as well as recent curriculum changes, including those to physics first, integrated math, and the elimination of G-level classes. I believe I am uniquely qualified to serve the board at this time for 3 reasons. First, I serve our company on our emergency response team, and I am actively involved in getting our workforce back to our manufacturing centers. I know how to juggle different factors, including government guidelines and mandates, insurance concerns, and health and safety of our workers. Secondly, I have scientific training that will allow me to meaningfully probe changes to the curriculum, especially in the area of STEM. Thirdly, I have 11 years of board experience with the Legal Systems Foundation of Chicago, which is a not-for-profit that ensures equal access to justice. During my 11 years on that board, I set a strategic plan. I helped conduct a nationwide search for a director who was aligned with our goals. I worked with the administration to deploy the policy, and I held the board accountable, or I held the administration accountable to make progress. I am running because I believe that I can make be a driving force to ensure that our kids get back to school and to get the education that will help them realize their potential. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. We'll move on to our next candidate, Marty Turek. Marty, if you could please unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Your 2 minutes to begin, or 2 minutes starts now.
Thanks, Mitha, and appreciate it, and thank you to the independent voters. My name is Marty Turek, and I've been in this district for about 43 years, both as a student at Oak School, Hinsdale Middle School, and Hinsdale Central. I have an undergrad in history from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and an MBA from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. I've got 3 kids, 2 at Hinsdale Central and 1 still in 181. I have volunteered for school boards for about the last 10 years, 8 years in District 181, where 2 of those were president, and about the last 2 years here on District 86. In addition to the board member 86, I also sit on the Facilities Committee and chair the Special Facilities Committee, which is responsible for an overwhelming majority of the $139 million of the referendum funds being allocated. And I can report to you that currently we are on time and currently under budget, and things are looking, very positive with the citizens' money. I think there's a couple really important factors in this campaign. One, I think experience counts. And as you know, my board experience, I've worked with 4 different superintendents. I've looked to implement curriculum changes. I've worked within balanced budgets, worked with deficit spending, negotiated labor contracts, and many, many other things that go into being a public school board member. And the other thing I think is continuity is very important in these school boards. As you know, they're staggered boards. Those are designed by not board members, but they're designed by other groups. And having continuity of a board member, if in 2 years the current 3 individuals on the board decide not to run, I think it's important to have someone that is currently there, such as myself, in order to maintain that continuity and keep consistency and have a little backward-looking history. So thank you, and again, appreciate the time, Mitha.
Thank you so much, Marty. We'll move on to our next candidate, Terry Walker. Terry, if you could just unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Your 2 minutes for your opening statement begins now.
Good afternoon. I'm Terry Walker. I'm a Hinsdale resident and have lived here for almost 5 years. My husband and I have a freshman at Hinsdale Central and a 6th grader at Hinsdale Middle School. I'm going to start by briefly mentioning 6 topics that are core to my vision: open governance and transparency, accountability, inclusion, data-driven decisions, open dialogue, and academic excellence. My vision includes focusing on open governance through community involvement and collaboration. I want to hold the administration accountable to represent our community's goals and the district's vision. I will ensure an inclusive and safe environment for every student, commit to data-driven, student-centered decision-making, engage in regular and respectful dialogue with the community, and preserve our high standards of academic excellence and support for all students. Professionally, I'm an HR executive with over 20 years of experience. I graduated with a business degree from Miami University of Ohio. And in my work every day, I rely on facts and data to make decisions to advance the success of the organization. These decisions include talent acquisition, sales incentive plans, succession planning, and I participate on our pandemic response team as we are looking at returning our workforce to working out of our office. I have experience actively listening to all sides of the issues and bringing teams to consensus, solving complex problems, as well as decisions regarding performance, incentives, advancement, and organizational restructurings. I would welcome an opportunity to serve our community in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. We'll move on to our final opening statement from Jeff Waters. Jeff, if you could unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Your 2 minutes for your opening statement begins now.
Thank you, Mita. And I wanted to say thank you to the independent voters for D86 for putting this together today, as well as the other candidates who attended the Zoom. I think it's a tremendous testament to the district and the passion of all these candidates. And we all are running because of such passion. So thanks to the rest of you for joining as well. To get quickly to the point, I am a district resident now for 17 years. I grew up in Naperville. I attended the University of Colorado. I was an econ major, and I've been in the proprietary derivatives trading space since 1995 as a member of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange since 1996. As such, I am tremendously data-driven. It's part of what I have to do to make any decision. I could be going to the grocery store, I could be buying a vehicle, or every day I'm making decisions based on culling data and making optimal decisions from doing so. The reason I am running for the board, I learned a lot during the referendum. I was a champion of the district, in my opinion, not so much to vote yes or to dissuade others from voting no, but for providing information to help voters make the best decision for themselves, which obviously, at least in my estimation, was a favorable outcome to the extent they were given that information and or they had certain information debunked from the other side. My point is, I am tremendously diplomatic and often walk away friends with people on my page or against, but it's that diplomacy I think this board could use to drive the best possible decisions in terms of curriculum, which is both appropriate and mirrors the demand from this district, not to mention participation opportunities to provide for all 4,000 kids in the district. The reason I am running is I do believe the governance piece could be better. And I look forward to hopefully joining the board to bring those strengths of my ability to call data, to analyze it, and to be diplomatic, to try to arrive at the most optimal decision for those kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you all sharing your reasons for running and introducing yourselves to the community. We'll now move on to the next portion of our event, which is the lightning round. As a reminder to the candidates, the lightning round, and to the community, the lightning round is a series of yes/no questions that were taken from community submissions. We will take a total of about 5 minutes to complete those questions. During this time, all candidates will remain muted and they will answer by raising their hand, just like this at face level. We request that the candidates leave their hand raised during this entire time period. I will be summarizing the yeses and nos for community members who will be listening in or who may be visually impaired. So we'll go ahead and get started. Our first question is, do you support revisiting the school attendance zones? Do you support revisiting school attendance zones? Please raise your hand if you support this. I see one yes from Mr. Justin Barron. I see no from Marty Turek, Terry Walker, TJ Edwards, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and Karen Shannon. Next question. If you are elected as a D86 board member, will you consider building grade level centers? If elected as a D86 board member, will you consider building grade level centers in D86? I see unanimous no's to this question, no yeses. Next, before widespread implementation of curriculum changes, should small pilots be considered a prerequisite before a larger rollout? Before widespread implementation of curriculum changes, should small pilots be considered a prerequisite before a larger rollout? Yeses, I see yes from Marty Turek, Terry Walker, Justin Barron, TJ Edwards, Jeff Waters. Oh gosh, unanimous. Everybody says yes to considering or requiring a small pilot. Next question. Do you have children in the district who will be affected by the science and math curriculum changes? Do you have children in the district who will be affected by the science and math curriculum changes? I see no from Justin Barron and yes from all the remaining candidates, Marty Turek, Terry Walker, TJ Edwards, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and I'm sorry, I see a yes from Karen Shannon. Thank you so much. Next question. If elected, will you ask the administration to revisit the integrated math curriculum changes scheduled to roll out in 2022? If elected, will you ask the administration to revisit the integrated math curriculum changes scheduled to roll out in 2022? Yes, from Terry Walker, Justin Barons, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and Karen Shannon with 2 hands up. No from Marty Turek and TJ Edwards. If elected, will you ask the administration to revisit requiring all incoming freshmen to enroll in physics first, beginning next fall? If elected, will you ask the administration to revisit requiring all incoming freshmen to enroll in physics first, beginning next fall? I see a yes from Terry Walker, Justin Barons, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and Karen Shannon. No from Marty Turek and TJ Edwards. Should D86 find a way to offer multiple science tracks at both schools, specifically bio, chemistry, and physics track, and a physics first track? Should D86 find a way to offer multiple science tracks at both schools, specifically biochem and physics, as well as physics first? I see a yes from Terry Walker, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and Karen Shannon. No from Marty Turek, Justin Barron, and TJ Edwards. Graduates of D86 must have an academic history that aligns with national norms. Will you make this a priority when addressing curriculum changes? Graduates of D86 must have an academic history that aligns with national norms. Will you make this a priority when addressing curriculum changes? I see yes from Justin Barron and no's from the remaining candidate. A group of Hinsdale South taxpayers argue that Hinsdale South does not receive equal treatment due to declining enrollment. Do you agree? A group of Hinsdale South taxpayers argue that Hinsdale South does not receive equal treatment due to declining enrollment. Do you agree? I see yes from Justin Barron and no from the remaining candidates, Marty Turek, Terry Walker, TJ Edwards, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and Karen Shannon. Enrollment at both schools has been declining. Have any of you reached out to those families in District 86 who are selecting private schools over D86 schools to better understand their choice? Enrollment at both schools has been declining. Have any of you reached out to families in the district who are selecting private schools over D86 schools to better understand their choice? I see yes from Terry Walker, TJ Edwards, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and Karen Shannon. I see no from Marty Turek and Justin Barron. Do you support inclusionary policies that lend a voice to all district stakeholders to access the Board of Education and to provide public comment before board actions are taken? Do you support inclusionary policies that lend a voice to all district stakeholders to access the Board of Education and provide public comment before board actions are taken? I see unanimous yeses from all 9 candidates. Do you value the Constitution of the United States of America, and will you stand in defense of any person that desires to address the Board of Education and protect their right to free speech at Board of Ed meetings? I see yes for all 9 candidates. Apologies, my lightning round question that I asked that was very confusing was a typo. So I'll go and ask the question that was supposed to be asked, which was, do you feel the current board has listened to and addressed community concerns? Do you feel that the current board has listened to and addressed community concerns? I see a yes from Marty Turek and a yes from TJ Edwards and a no from Terry Walker, Justin Barron, Jeff Waters, Mark Pino, Debbie Leventhal, Peggy James, and Karen Shannon. All right, now we're moving on to the next portion of our event, which is the candidate question and answer period. Names are going to be drawn at random. Each candidate that will be speaking first has 1 minute. Each subsequent candidate, who will go in alphabetical order following, will have 45 seconds. We will give you all a 10-second warning. At the end of your speaking time, we will mute and move on to the next candidate. And our first question is for Terry Walker. If elected, you will be seated in late April or early May, with classes ending in D86 in mid-May. In light of COVID-19, when school resumes in the fall, what should the delivery model of instruction look like and why? Please let me know if you'd like me to repeat the question.
I think that by fall, the instruction should be in person and hopefully 100% fully in person for those students and families who want to come in person. The teachers are being vaccinated right now. We can anticipate that more vaccine will be available over the summer. And it is my hope that the district will be able to work towards moving to fully in-person learning by the fall. And, perhaps there will be some additional creative things that we can do to ensure that we can get to that place. I anticipate that we will still work through any safety mitigations that are required, such as social distancing, wearing masks, and perhaps even introducing voluntary testing if that's necessary. But it would be, again, my hope and my position that we would be doing everything possible to get to fully in-person learning by the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. We'll move on to Jeff Waters. If elected, you'll be seated in late April, early May, with classes ending in mid-May. In light of COVID-19, when school resumes in the fall, what should the delivery model of instruction look like and why? Jeff, your time begins now. You have 40
The delivery model. Thank you. The delivery model should include the opportunity for full in-person instruction. It should also cater to those who want or need to be remote. I also believe that to the extent that the current board had generated surveys in the last handful of months, like other districts, including Glenbrook North South and the district up in Arlington Heights with Prospect, Buffalo Grove, and Hersey, had we generated those surveys, we understand the demand currently and perhaps could offer that solution as early as perhaps April into early May. We haven't generated those surveys, and because of it, thank you, because of that, we've been able to do so. So to make a very long story short, we should be fully reopened in the fall safely and offering the best possible remote platform to those who need or want to be remote.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Justin Barron. Same question. In light of COVID-19, when school resumes in the fall, what should the delivery model of instruction look like and why?
I think it depends. It depends on the vaccine rollout and people's willing to return to normal. Even, it kind of depends because, even though we do have vaccines, there might be a lot of people still unwilling and unsure to go back to normal. So I think it really depends.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. We'll move on to our next candidate, TJ Edwards. In light of COVID-19, when school resumes in the fall, what should the delivery model of instruction look like and why? Please go ahead and unmute yourself, TJ, and your time starts now.
I echo some of what's been stated. I think it should be a concerted effort to start to transition the students back to in-person learning. I would like to see prior to the start of May, a push to even have longer instructional days, maybe 90-minute blocks, regular bell schedule. I think we should also come up with a plan to deal with the emotional gaps and the academic gaps that have formed from the students being in the space that they're in now with the shorter class days, as well as the effects of the pandemic. I would also like us to continue to work through the vaccination rollout. You know, we have about, I believe, 99% of the teachers vaccinated. We want to continue to increase that for the community as well.
Thank you so much, TJ. We'll move on to the next candidate, Peggy James. Peggy, in light of COVID-19, when school resumes in the fall, what should the delivery model of instruction look like and why?
Sure. So I believe that the decisions and choices made this past year have been somewhat inadequate for our kids. Returning kids to the classroom full time for those who wish to attend in person, as well as providing an adequate option for those that wish to remain remote, is imperative. Students have lost too much educational time this year. By the end of this year, they will have lost the equivalent of 54 days of school by the end of the year. 54 days. It's a large number and is very concerning for me. The COVID-driven compromises to instruction time are a concern.
10 seconds.
With what I think is in-person must be the norm, with optimal learning platform for those continuing to need remote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. We'll move on to our next candidate, Debbie Leventhal. In light of COVID-19, when school resumes in the fall, what's the delivery model of instruction look like and why?
I agree with many of my other candidates that are on the panel that we should look forward to a full in-person model this fall with a remote option for families that still need it. I won't reiterate some of the things that have been said, but additionally, I think we need to look at improving our remote delivery, not just for students, but for our teachers, and make sure that we're not outsourcing our remote students to a third party. So I would want to ensure that we upgrade our technology for ease of delivery for the teachers and better perception for the students. I also think we need to start planning now and layering our mitigations with the ability to pull back rather than to have to add in. So we need to be planning now for a full reopen late August.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to Mark Pino. I don't know if I need to repeat the question, so
No, you're good.
All right.
I hope you don't. Yeah, absolutely. I think the first focus that needs to be is getting kids back in the classroom in the fall safely. And also has been brought up before, there will be a remote aspect to some degree, and we need to have a plan in place for that as well. But the focus needs to be on getting kids back in the classroom. Not only that, we need to address the COVID gap that's developed over the past year. There's a recent McKinsey study that came out that said that the current hybrid and remote model that's in place in District 86 as well as elsewhere is leading to, at a minimum, of a 5 to 8% gap in learning. And so we need to understand that, we need to assess that, and we need to remediate that in addition to getting the children back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Moving on to Karen Shannon. You could go ahead and answer this question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Great. Your time starts now.
Like many others, I too believe we need to be in person in the fall with a remote option. And I will follow on to what Mark just said, that we need to figure out how to assess what the learning gap was during the pandemic. We need a plan to do that assessment. I believe strongly that we need to pause curriculum changes at this time and allow teachers to focus on addressing the gap and figuring out how to help students come back up to speed.
Thank you so much, Karen. Moving on to Marty Turek. All right, could you please unmute yourself, Marty? There you go. Do you need me to repeat the question or we're good? Okay, go ahead and your time starts now.
Yeah, thanks. I would like to get the kids 100% back today and absolutely full in the fall, but we have to follow, unless candidates are willing to risk $3.2 million of state funding that are given to us and $1.1 million of federal. If we do, and risk the liability of our insurance carrier not carrying us, we've got to follow the IDPH and the CDC. And right now it's 6 feet. Whether we like it or not, we can't just break it. we need to follow the recommendations of them, but I fully expect and hope we can get them back in even sooner. And we need to address the gap and all the other things. But yes, as soon as possible, 100%.
All right, well, thank you so much. We'll move on to our next question. And our next question is going to be answered first by Peggy James. Peggy, what concrete measurements, benchmarks, or other information should be used and analyzed when proposing and implementing changes to curriculum? What concrete measurements, benchmarks, or other information should be used and analyzed when proposing and implementing changes to curriculum? Peggy, your time starts now. You've got 1 minute.
Thank you. In my professional career, I lead cross-functional projects to identify, develop, and implement strategic and operational initiatives. What that means is I use a key management tool daily, which is called DMAIC, and that stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. So furthermore, what that means is I look at the data, I define it, I measure it, and then I go through and I determine different scenarios that might work or not work and rule out different ideas, improve those ideas, and then have success metrics to finish up at the tail end. I would apply those same metrics and those same tools into any curriculum changes to ensure that there is some data-driven reasons for making those changes. First question, what are we fixing? I would begin there.
Okay, great. 10 seconds. Anything else, Peggy? We're good? All right. Moving on to our next candidate, Debbie Leventhal. I'll repeat the question for you. What concrete measurements, benchmarks, or other information should be used and analyzed when proposing and implementing changes to curriculum? You'll have 45 seconds to answer. Your time starts now.
So when we're looking at changing and implementing curriculum, we want to look at the impact it has on student outcomes, their own measurement of student growth, in terms of achievement. We should be looking at SAT, ACT scores as a district. Those are a snapshot measurement, but they do give us, a clear indication over time whether or not we're maintaining our excellence or we're falling behind. We also need to look at individual student growth, such as PSAT to SAT growth, achievement within classes, and AP test scores, as well as AP test participation. Those are normed courses with defined curriculum that we can use to compare ourselves to other districts.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie. Moving on to Mark. What concrete measurements, benchmarks, or other information should be used and analyzed when proposing and implementing changes to curriculum? Your 45 seconds starts now.
Sorry, Mita. First off, absolutely, they need to be used. And I would say benchmarking needs to be the first thing. We're not the only ones that are doing this, quite honestly. There's people that are ahead of us. There's people that have done things before. We need to rely on them. We need to build off of what they've done and the mistakes that they've made. We need to learn from them so that we don't do them ourselves. As far as data, I think we need to look at metrics, but we also need to be able to separate out growth and achievement. If you're looking at test scores and we're looking at, ACT and SAT, those are all absolutely important, but those are achievement. We need to look at growth of students and how the curriculum impacts that. So where do they come in as freshmen? Where do they leave as seniors? We need to make sure that we're tracking that as well. And I would want to see where the top 25 high schools are in the country. Before we make any change, show me what the top 25 public high schools in the country are doing, and let's compare ourselves to them.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. We'll move on to Karen. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Your 45 seconds starts now.
I'm going to repeat much of what was just said. First of all, before we make curriculum changes, let's understand what problem we're solving. Let's not make changes unless changes are necessary. And when we do make changes, tell me why we're looking at the solutions we're looking at. What are its strengths and what are the weaknesses? I agree with Mark, we should be doing benchmarking. How are these curriculum changes impacting other students at other schools? And I'd really like the schools that we're using as benchmarking to be similarly situated to our schools. And what was suggested earlier, pilots, I think that would be a great way to also benchmark and look at the impact on ACT and SAT scores. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Marty, you're next. We'll move on to you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Nope, I'm good.
Your turn starts now.
Yeah, one thing I don't think anybody's mentioned is rely on our faculty and our our employees that are in the buildings. We have master degrees, we have PhDs, we have hundreds of years of experience. So to rely on them is critical. Certainly, I'd look at our peer groups. I'd look for references of other districts that do it. And I'm not against pilots, but I would rely on our staff who are with our students, deliver the curriculum every day, know the shortcomings, know the positive of it. It's probably better than anybody.
All right. Thank you so much, Marty. Terry, we'll move on to you. If you could unmute yourself. All right.
From my perspective, I think the first thing is, as Shannon mentioned, is really identifying the problem that we're trying to solve, explaining what that problem is so that everyone is starting off from the same page. I agree that we should be looking at SAT and ACT scores, but in addition to that, really conducting a needs analysis. Once we've done that, then decide, okay, now what do we want to do from here? And making sure that we're following some best practices in curriculum design and development, if in fact we make the decision that we want to move forward with a change. I also believe that it would be important to release data from other districts that have gone down this path before, as well as just making sure that any change is piloted first and fits in with the direction of our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. We'll move on to Jeff. If you could unmute. Perfect. Your 45 seconds starts now.
I love that alarm bell. That's phenomenal. So I guess I would jump on many things that have been said, but I would clarify that we shouldn't be having this discussion. Integrated math should not be proposed during a pandemic, considering not one public high school in the state of Illinois in the top 25 rankings implements that particular. And I know a lot of the fellow candidates would agree with that. It wasn't mentioned, but I want to bring that up because I'm tremendously data committed. The data that I saw at the math meeting to approve the program sequence change
10 seconds
was generally non-existent, and tremendous amount of data has shown up to actually oppose it. So I don't think the data was there. We need to call it, and the data that was certainly opposes it, but we shouldn't be discussing it during a pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We'll move on to Justin. Thanks, Justin.
Yes.
Your 45 seconds starts now.
Thank you. I would look at my problem with the science curriculum in particular is the entire state, almost the entire state goes biology, chemistry, physics. You know, and the problem with going physics first is it leaves our kids underprepared if they leave the district and overprepared if they move into the district. So one of the things I would look at is what are other schools doing, and try not to diverge from that too much. Like Marty was saying, we have a great staff, so let's definitely try to use them and, you know, work within a framework that really benefits our students.
Thank you, Justin. TJ, you're next. If you could unmute. Great, your time starts now.
Okay, I think one of the things that I would like to acknowledge in the curriculum is that I believe the last time the curriculum was audited was over 2 decades ago. So I think, you know, the fact that, you know, the experts, the instructors, the math department, the heads of those departments, both science and math, decided to evaluate that and come to the table and say, hey, we think that there are some areas of opportunity here, and this is what we present is one. Two, I echo everything that's said. I think we do need to do some comparison analysis of what some of the other schools are doing. But I think beyond just what's happening in the United States, I think some other countries have implemented this program and have done so successfully. So I think that there's room for that, benchmarking, piloting, and collaborating with our teachers.
Thank you so much, TJ. All right. Our next question goes to Debbie Leventhal. Each election cycle, board candidates pledge to improve community engagement opportunities. Do you believe that these opportunities have improved since the last election? And if elected, what do you commit to doing to improve community engagement in the first 6 months of your term? I'll repeat it one more time. Each election cycle, board candidates pledge to improve community engagement opportunities. Do you believe that these opportunities have improved since the last election? And if elected, what do you commit to doing to improve community engagement in the first 6 months of your term? Debbie, your time starts now.
So I think we've watched, community engagement opportunities systematically be removed, over time for us, over the last year. We had a First Amendment violation. We had public comment, the second public comment session removed, and then the entire public comment was moved to the end of the meeting. I think we need to walk that back. Now public comment is at the beginning, which provides an opportunity for constituents, and add in another session at the end. But beyond that, we need to be looking at survey tools, town halls, task forces, committee representation. We need to take our, current PTAC committee and make it a more meaningful back and forth dialogue, and look for other opportunities like that, maybe a curriculum council, to have constituents really have a voice in our direction that we go. I think we also need more informal dialogue.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. I know 1 minute goes by fast, 45 seconds even faster. Next is Mark Pino. Each election cycle, board candidates pledge to improve community engagement opportunities. Do you believe that these opportunities have improved since the last election? And if elected, what do you commit to doing to improve community engagement in the first 6 months of your term? Mark, your time starts now.
Yeah, I would say there has been some improvement since the last election, but I would argue that they were pretty bad at the last election. So that's not necessarily a good benchmark to go back to. The role as a board member is to not only secure the achievement of the students, but also we have the responsibility to represent the values, the beliefs, the needs, and the priorities of the community. And the only way that we can ensure that is by including the community and representing the community in everything that we're doing. And I think the way that we improve communication is through communicating. We need to make the community a valuable part of the process. We need to pull them in. We don't need to basically do information at a board level and kind of push it out to them. We need to make sure that we're including them through roundtable discussions, through maybe having meetings with the board and the community on different subjects, things like that. We need to be more engaged with the community.
Thank you so much, Mark. Karen, you'll be next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I've got it. Thank you. I agree with much of what was said. I would like to see some monthly metric that is reviewed at board meetings that tracks community satisfaction. I would suggest that we have it conducted anonymously by a third party, and that it's set to a certain percentage of students, teachers in the community, that we ask the question, are you satisfied with the education provided by D86, and why? We can determine a jump off point, and from there we should be aiming to get 100% satisfaction by the end of the year. This will force the board to make changes. And again, I agree with all the different things provided, community involvement, more opportunities.
Thank you, Karen. We'll move on to Marty. All right, Marty, go ahead.
Thanks. Again, you can always do better, but there's a lot of outlets here, and I've been on these boards. We have board meetings, we have public comment, everything is documented. We have committee meetings for finance and PTAC and HR. We have board docs. We have the Twitter handle. A lot of stuff goes out. It's all there. I mean, we could do a lot more. And respectfully, a monthly satisfaction, I would respectfully disagree with that. And to get 100% satisfaction, I think is unrealistic. I think we communicate a lot. We do surveys. And if somebody has some more ideas, I think any board should be open to them.
Thank you, Marty. Moving on to Terry.
I believe we absolutely have an opportunity to improve communication between the board and the community. As was stated before, moving public comment to the end of the meeting was certainly an opportunity and felt like silencing community members and that community members' views were not important. Where I see an additional opportunity is increasing that communication. Perhaps there can be As others have mentioned, some additional forums, listening sessions, opportunities for community members' voices to be heard, and for the community and the board to come to some sort of common ground.
10 seconds.
I know that a lot of emails come into the board members too, and I think that's another way for community members to understand what kinds of issues are being sent to the board. Possibly those can be aggregated and shared.
Thank you so much, Terry. Jeff, we'll move on to you. All right, go ahead, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do think the Board of Education is a very challenging role with respect to expectations in a community like ours, which is tremendously passionate about education. I think I could give tremendous advice in terms of outsourcing communication roles with each member on the board, like Terry just mentioned, with respect to emails, to have them more timely answered, perhaps by rotating that responsibility from one board member to the next, perhaps to have a committee of community members to help do things like that. But I think from a community standpoint, there has been some frustration, and I think recent changes could increase to better optimize that, because it has been frustrating. And for me, seeing so much consensus without a lot of discussion, it's hard to understand what's being discussed, i.e. lack of communication.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We'll move on to Justin. There you go. Your time starts now.
Thank you. I agree with Marty. The board is very transparent with the public comments, various different committees going on, and whatever document that a community member wants to look at that's not there, it's a FOIA act away. And I think public comment should be at the beginning and stay at the beginning. But I agree with Marty, and the board is very transparent. Everything's there. And I would also encourage the members of the public to come and make comments, whether it's virtually or in person, because that feedback is extremely important for how the board runs. And the only way we could get that feedback is if people come and comment.
Thank you so much. Justin, we'll move on to TJ.
Okay. I think that I echo the fact that, emotions are high. It's a pandemic. I think people were locked away in their house forever. And having a decision like moving the comments to the end completely stifled and frustrated and made people feel, a lack of value for their opinions. I think to improve that, I definitely think, if nothing else, this pandemic has gave us an opportunity to learn different ways to communicate with each other. We're all doing it for our jobs. So, the implementation of Zoom, fireside chats and town halls, and I think would go a long way. I think, while the information is there, I think understanding and breaking the information down so people understand why and how the decisions were made is important.
Thank you. Thank you so much, TJ. Peggy, you're next.
Sure. I also agree. We have an opportunity to improve communications within the district. I believe communication needs to be more two-way. So both the district pushing their information back to the community, as well as receiving feedback from the community. So two-way street there. The district does a good job of pushing their decisions and their communications through many different forms, with emails, Twitter, et cetera, sometimes repetitively. I still struggle with the decision to move community participation to the end of meetings after all decisions and votes have taken place. I think we could improve our surveys to include opportunities around where does the community feel a certain position is, as opposed to, do you prefer this or that?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Peggy. We'll move on to our next question, which will be answered by Jeff Waters first. Other than COVID-related expenditures, what are the most serious budgetary challenges the district may face in the next 4 years? Other than COVID-related expenditures, what are the most serious budgetary challenges the district may face in the next 4 years? Jeff, your time starts now.
Thank you. I think the first concern I would have is with respect to the budget. 72% is labor. We just recut our labor agreement a couple months ago. And my concern with what I saw was there's, the 6% increase to the pension piece. And as we do move forward as an Illinois resident, where people are leaving the state already, and now these schools are big business, unlike any time in the past. And now the light is shining bright on school districts to act as such. And we have people who can vote with their feet to go to private or parochial schools nearby. To the extent that exodus continues for any reason whatsoever, we have to have a careful eye on the finances and steward accordingly as we move forward. So that would be my biggest general concern moving forward from a financial perspective.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Moving on to Justin, I'll repeat the question. Other than COVID-related expenditures, what are the most serious budgetary challenges the district may face in the next 4 years?
Yeah, the state is broke. If you want to know where Illinois bonds are going, look at Puerto Rico. State is broke. We should now rely on the state to, and the hard part about the state being broke is, yes, we don't get less money, but also makes it hard from a budgetary perspective to, project the budget from year to year or even, quarter to quarter. And us as a district has to be prepared for the state not to be there, because they will not be there. So in District 86 is very lucky because we have the resources to dampen that impact. We just have to be prepared to use them.
Thank you, Justin. Moving on to TJ, would you like me to repeat the question? Okay.
No, I got it. I think, being one of the districts that receive some of the lowest contributions from the state, I think it always puts us in a position where we have to be proactive in planning how we're going to look at how we budget for each year, each fiscal year. As Marty mentioned earlier, that 3.2 million is a great asset, but if you don't get it, then you're having to rob Peter to pay Paul. So I think we definitely have to be proactive. Another thing is, while the referendum is accomplishing a lot of the infrastructure improvements, there are still some necessary upgrades to our technology, instructional, physical education equipment that will need to be done. And so we'll need to make sure that we have processes in place to put money aside to take care of those things in the future.
Thank you, TJ. We'll move on to Peggy next. Thanks.
Thank you. So I believe the long-term financial health is always a challenge for school districts. Representing 72% of our budget, salaries and benefits comprise a significant majority of our district's expenditures. As such, even small changes can have a big impact on our financial health. Obviously, we're not relating to COVID, but the impact of COVID on healthcare costs could be an implication. Recently ratified teachers' contract is short-term and expires in less than a year and a half, and does include that provision for doubling the pension spiking. And given the position of the state, it could lead to the transfer of those pension costs from the state to the local school district level. For those, I'm concerned it's a very real risk, and these are things that I would like to address.
Thanks, Peggy. Move on to Debbie. Can unmute yourself, Debbie? All right, your time starts now.
So I agree that the state of Illinois and the financial state of Illinois is always going to be our biggest challenge. But I also want to address the teacher's contract. While we went from a 3% stipend to 6% in the last few years, what we did take away was the fact that we were paying for insurance coverage or premiums for teachers that retire for potentially up to 10 years until they reach Medicare age. So I think that was a step in a more stable, predictable direction. I think too, like Peggy said, we are going to have another teacher's contract to negotiate in about a year and a half. And we're going to have to be thoughtful about that, where we run the risk of being desirable for really outstanding teachers, but also doing that within our budgetary restrictions.
Thank you. We'll move on to Mark.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Thank you. So I think, the important thing to point out is right now, currently the district is in a very stable position, which is good, but that doesn't mean that we can do better. I mean, we have about a $6 million tax base, and most of the funding for the district does come from local sources versus state sources. And I think the biggest issue that we have that we need to focus on right now is with the increased costs, as you mentioned, with COVID, with the debt service related to the referendum, the instruction and support services related to the teacher's contract. It really comes down to prioritization, especially with the implementation of the strategic plan. What do we want to do and how do we want to do it? It's all going to come down to the budget justification for all of that. As far as the teacher salary goes, the one thing to point out, I agree with everything that's been said, but we have.
Thank you, Mark. Karen, you are next. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Again, I would agree with much of what's been said. I would say that one of the biggest budget concerns is how to broaden curriculum choices. I think there's a real lesson learned from the pandemic about the need for better technology to enable remote teaching. And I see a path forward where if we could build infrastructure around this, we could enable South students to participate in classes that are offered in Central, which I understand is an issue. So again, broadening curriculum changes would probably be my choice.
1 second. Great. Okay. Marty, we'll move on to you. If you could unmute yourself.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. A lot have been said and good ideas. I am not a fan of pension spiking. I'm against that. I worked hard in 181 to lower that in every contract. And Ms. Leventhal, I really appreciate that you understood of the pulling back a lot of that healthcare. That was a quid pro quo. And it's very basic. The 3 to 6% is very predictable. Healthcare costs are not predictable. So to the district and taxpayers, that was a win. But we do have just the referendum doesn't fix everything forever. We got to continue to fund the facilities, both building and tech. We need to always look at the benefits, and we have to deal with the pension. But that is a Springfield issue a lot with the pension.
Thank you. We'll move on to Terry. You can unmute yourself.
So I agree that the budget coming from the state of Illinois could be one of our biggest challenges. I also think that just any other unforeseen things that may occur. COVID was not expected. There could be something else that comes up that we need to be prepared for. We need to set some money aside for. And, I also agree with Shannon as we look at curriculum, how can we, and we talk about possibly increasing the science opportunities for courses, is there an opportunity to find additional funds to support that?
Thank you, Terry. So our next question is going to go to Marty Turek. In the last 18 months, community members have raised concerns to the board about physics first science curriculum and integrated math curriculum changes. How do you feel about these curricular changes? And if elected, how will you address the community concerns? I can repeat the question if you'd like.
No, I'm good with it, but thanks.
All right.
To me, this is a continuous improvement. I understand that not everybody liked the changes, but as one person said, the math and science have not been updated for decades. I'll talk about the math first. The old math was not aligned to the new STEM info, and it's more data driven now and works with statistics of what the world needs. As Mr. Waters said, statistics and data analysis. Our old curriculum didn't do that. This does. And just for the record, the last time we looked, 45% of Hinsdale Central kids have self-selected physics first. So is it totally bad for everybody? We understand, and everybody understands change is not good. And I do not go, if it's not broken, don't change it. Why do you repair a plane engine every 5,000 hours? Because you need to continuously improve it. So I am for math and science upgrades, and nothing is being taken away from math currently.
Moving on to Terry. If you could unmute yourself. Thank you, Terry. Your 45 seconds starts now.
So I don't support changing the math or the science curriculum. I think that to me, what it appears that we're doing is really creating a one-size-fits-all approach. that doesn't serve the needs of the students at either end of the spectrum. It doesn't serve the needs of the students that are high achievers, and it won't serve the needs of the students that need extra support. And, I believe that we should take a pause, particularly in the math curriculum, and take some time to reevaluate and make a decision if that's the direction that we want to go forward. We should also look at the results from first semester for science and actually see whether or not we achieve the results that we anticipated.
Thank you. We'll move on to Jeff. Would you like, I can repeat the question while you're unmuting?
Oh, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So kind of two things really. Math, integrated math includes D-tracking. And we go from 3 tracks to 2. When you do that, you arguably suffer curriculum erosion and challenges for all of the remaining students now in 2 tracks versus 3. This doesn't play out in all the math disciplines, but other than algebra, it does. And that's very concerning. From a standpoint of student population support from the feeders, overwhelming 60 or 70% chose not to say I support it. So in a pandemic with 30, 35% supporting it, given that data, considering detracking, it's an absolute must to the very least. Kelvin.
Jeff, thank you. We'll move on to Justin. If you could unmute yourself.
First, I would say no curriculum changes during the pandemic. That should be completely off the table till kids are 100% back in person in the fall. And I would also like to work more with teachers to, see how this new curriculum is being implemented. What are some of their strategies and things they've learned from it? But like I was saying earlier, I think we should more closely align to what the rest of the state is doing, especially with our science curriculum, because it makes kids who
10 seconds.
Underprepared if they leave and overprepared if they came in, and that really puts our kids at a disadvantage.
Thank you, Justin. We'll move on to TJ for this 5th question.
Sure. I think what the district is doing is creating an effort to champion growth opportunities for all students across the board. And I think that's our goal. That's our role. That's what we're supposed to do. I think the strategic plan identified this as an objective. I think allowing the district the opportunity to provide concrete information, giving them time to explore what the change would entail, bring it back for us to have in-depth conversations about what's being presented and what the outcome of what is being presented is important and is part of the plan. I think the fact that the implementation strategy will expand over quite a few years, I think is one way that they're showing that. I think another thing is we're dealing with equitable curriculum, not equal curriculum. I think that's important to know.
Thank you, TJ. We'll move on to Peggy. And there you go. If you could just hit unmute.
Got it. So from my perspective, an overhaul of the math and the science curriculums are not necessarily the solution. Marty mentioned that the curriculum hasn't been audited in over 2 decades. I guess I'm questioning why. Continuous improvement should be the process to gradually update the curriculum throughout. Also, Jeff mentioned that the new integration of the math includes some D-tracking, which results in less choices for our students. Finally, regarding the math, I don't understand the board's urgency to revamp the math curriculum without the supporting data back in October. Notably, 2 months after it was approved, Ms. Prentice did state that at a board meeting that D86 needed all hands on deck to address the sheer volume of Ds and Fs.
Thank you.
That were the problem at all.
Thank you so much, Peggy. We'll move on to Debbie to answer this question next.
So I don't agree with the science curriculum as a physics first for everybody. I'd like to see more opportunities such as the BCP track revisited. In terms of the math, I think there's a misconception. You know, our curriculum may not have been overhauled in decades, but like every other high performing school, our curriculum has been tweaked and improved over time. I know that firsthand because I have 2 kids taking Hinsdale Central math classes. Secondly, there's a misconception that some of these statistical and data analysis concepts haven't been integrated, and they have since the mid-90s with the implementation of the AP statistics exam. So there's already integration of key concepts, and to go to an IM when none of our peer districts are doing it and there's no data to support that will be successful just seems negligent.
Thank you, Debbie. We'll move on to Mark, please.
Great, thank you. I mean, I don't want to repeat things that have been said already, and I'm not a curriculum expert, so I don't want to hold myself out as such. I guess I want to speak more on the process as far as how we rolled out the math and science curriculum changes. And I just believe that the process around identifying what is the goal, what is the, you know, as other people said, what is the problem, what are we trying to accomplish, wasn't clearly defined. I believe that the process of evaluating both peer programs and schools wasn't thorough enough and wasn't in depth enough to really to validate the change. And I think that needs to be revisited. So I think that we also need to have clear rubrics and metrics around what the new curriculum is going to have that's going to drive versus what the current curriculum has.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And last to answer this question is Karen Shannon. If you could please unmute yourself. Oh, one more time. Karen, can you try to unmute yourself one more time?
There we go. I agree with much of what has been said. To begin with, our schools are top tier in the state. So again, I question what problem are we trying to solve by changing these curriculum? Mr. Turk has said that we needed an overhaul, but I agree with Debbie. We've been tweaking it all along and our students are doing just fine. So why are we introducing this? It is the wrong time to do this during a pandemic. And we are creating a one path for all students, much like Terry introduced the subject. I just oppose this. I agree that we can provide a broad range of curriculum and these could be parts of that component, but to force all students into this is just wrong.
All right, thank you so much. And just as a reminder, we are muting candidates after the time is up, just so we can stay on schedule. But we thank you for your answers to these questions. We'll move on to our 6th question, and the 6th question will go to Karen Shannon. The administration recently changed grading practices district-wide. Currently, the lowest grade a student can receive is a 50%. Please explain if you support this change and what impact you think it will have on students. Again, the administration recently changed grading practices district-wide. Currently, the lowest grade a student can receive is a 50%. Please explain if you support this change and what impact you think it will have on the students.
So I do not support this change. I understand that this change was suggested in order to improve the morale of students. Nonetheless, it is going to institute a problem down the line in that when students apply to colleges, the colleges are going to catch on to this. It's not like we're going to be able to hide this grade inflation. It's just the wrong way to teach students to be accountable for studying. So I'm just opposed.
All right, thank you, Karen. We'll move on to Marty. You'll have 45 seconds. If you could unmute yourself. There you go.
There you go. I do. And again, I'm not a fan of handouts for that, but I went on record at the board meeting. The fear was that if all the other districts around us, all the other districts in the state, all the districts nationwide kind of gave everybody during COVID, very difficult times, remote learning, if they gave them an ease and we didn't, our grades would be terrible comparable to our peer districts and our rankings. So while I don't like it, and I don't support it, but in these difficult times, you had to be consistent or our grade point average would have been way lower than our county, state, and nation. So I think we were consistent with the nation on that.
Thank you, Marty. Moving on to Terry.
So I don't support giving a 50% as the lowest grade either. Yeah, I think it sends the wrong message to the student and isn't, isn't helpful for the students that are turning their assignments in on time and doing the work appropriately. Me, if we were going to consider a change, maybe it's dropping the lowest grade, something like that, where you can accept that maybe a student has one bad day and they didn't do well on a test. That I could maybe get behind, but just giving 50% when I didn't even turn something in, I can't agree with that.
Thank you, Terry. Moving on to Jeff. Oh, try again. One more time, Jeff.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I also do not agree with the practice. I do understand the kids are suffering mightily during the pandemic, and to the extent we're throwing them some grace, I do think it sends the wrong message. I think the more important message is to try to get these kids back into school for full in-person instruction. The use of surveys perhaps could have sped that process up faster than it's been occurring. And relative to the administration to teacher ratio, I think we have a lot of bodies to address that issue when you look at the student admin ratio. So I think there's other solutions that can be more creative, and I definitely disagree with this one.
Thank you, Jeff. Moving on to Justin.
First of all, I would just say it's a pandemic. We must make accommodations for these children. I have no problems with the 50% being the lowest grade. Colleges have been understanding too. A lot of them have been loosening their standards, dropping the requirement for an ACT or an SAT. And I think what we should really be focusing on is trying to understand the gap, the education gap that this pandemic has caused in our students. And once we understand this gap, we could work harder to make sure our kids are better.
Thank you, Justin. We'll move to TJ.
Yeah, I think this is a tough one. I think with the pandemic and the impacts that it's had on students, I think that, yeah, in some regards, a teacher can take a hard line and say, if you were late on turning in an assignment, if you had technological difficulties and couldn't turn it in on time, no matter what, I'm grading you this way. Or they could take the approach of allowing some flexibilities. I think it's hard to say a right and a wrong answer, but I think, being flexible and doing what you can to accommodate kind of the social and emotional impacts of this pandemic and what students are struggling with. I think teachers can tell a difference between students just not doing assignments and screwing about, and students trying their best to achieve during this time. So.
Thank you, TJ. That bell, I tell you guys. Peggy, you're next.
Thank you. I'd like to say that we're not on an even playing field with other schools. Some schools are open full-time in person, some remote only, and some are in a similar hybrid situation to us. I have to say that our school district appeared to be a little unprepared and surprised by the student grades that first semester. There's some inconsistent grading from class to class and department to department. And what I saw is some of the D86 students were successful with our new COVID delivery models, others were not. So I know that the grading, I assume it's a difficult situation and was trying to even the playing field.
Thank you, Peggy. We'll move on to Debbie.
So, philosophically, I'm not a fan of grade inflation. I've seen other things, work just as well, such as dropping a lowest test grade. But I think if we're having a look at potentially giving 50% instead of a 0 for uncompleted work, then that's just a symptom of a bigger problem. And we need to be looking at what resources we need to put in place to address the fact that students are missing work, such as additional special services, social workers. Maybe we need, beyond the guidance counselor, one adult in the building to check in with students. So I don't get the impression that these changes are COVID specific. They are going to be in place long term. And I don't agree with the grade inflation component.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. We'll move on to Mark.
Thank you. And I would agree with what, Debbie and also what Terry just said. I think we're looking at the symptom and not the cause here. The problem is the kids aren't learning. And that's the problem. And I think what we need to do is we need to challenge the administration to reach out and say, what do we need to do? What intervention steps do we need to take to improve the learning process, both remote and what is in person right now? There's a reason why kids aren't learning. We can look at things as far as grade inflation or dropping the lowest grade, which I'm in favor of, which I'm not in favor of. I would rather look at the cause as far as what is actually causing it and saying, hey, let's look at what can we do to actually make it better so that children are learning, because that's really what the problem is.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our 7th question. This is for Mark Pino. A majority of the District 86 community worked together to pass a referendum 2 years ago to improve both schools. However, tension still exists between South and Central community members. If elected, how will you work to heal the divide between Hinsdale South and Hinsdale Central communities? Again, a majority of the D86 community worked together to pass a referendum 2 years ago to improve both schools. However, tensions still exist between South and Central community members. If elected, how will you work to heal the divide between Hinsdale South and Hinsdale Central communities?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that can be done here. And I think most importantly, the district needs to get information out to the community about the performance of both schools and particularly Hinsdale South. We need to understand just how well both schools are performing. And I think we need to replace the anecdotal information that's kind of floating around with actual facts and actual data that show just how great both schools really are. Number 2, I think that the district needs to understand for all of the students who are tracked in to go to South that do not from the feeder schools, they need to reach out to those feeder schools, and partner with them to understand through parent surveys and such, why aren't their children going to South? What are the reasons? Are they going to Catholic school? Are they going to University of Chicago lab? Are they moving out of district? What are they doing? We need to take proactive steps to understand what's actually happening.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to Karen next, and I can repeat the question if you need me to. Oh, one more time. Unmute yourself one more time.
Okay.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. I think Mark has it nailed. I think the main division that I see is the declining enrollment over South and how we should fix that. And there's a lot of discussion at Facebook and other groups of how to fix that declining enrollment. And I feel like everyone is jumping to a solution without really understanding what the problem is. We need data. We need to understand where the students are going that aren't going to South. So I would be an advocate for some sort of a committee to dive into what's going on.
Thank you so much, Karen. We'll move to Marty. Oh, yep, there you go.
We brought this up a few times, and as maybe motherhood and apple pie as it seems, I think a great way is get the students interacting with one another. If it starts there, maybe some of the parents will see that there is certain things that they can work on. But I'm telling you, get students together in some type of activity, some type of community involvement, some type of stuff that both schools can get behind. I think it's going to go a long way to show an example to a lot of people what we could possibly do. So I'll start with the students.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you so much. Terry, we'll have you go next, please.
Thank you. So I agree with some of the comments earlier about finding out why some families are choosing to go to other schools. But I also think, as we talked before about communication, there could also be an opportunity for us to bring parents together and perhaps students for some communication and really try to dig deeper and understand what some of the issues are. There could be some some things that are bubbling up on the surface that we could discuss and come to some common ground. So I think I would really start there.
Thank you, Terry. We'll move to Jeff. If elected, how will you work to heal the divide between Hinsdale South and Hinsdale Central communities? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I do believe the referendum was a tremendous push, and it drove a lot of friendships, cohesion, unity. These were all themes that came from the referendum that we should rally from and try to embrace as we move forward. I do believe, obviously, we are two schools in one district, and what the referendum taught us, especially when we engaged, to Marty's point and to others' point about the parents engaging, we need to be role models to our children so they can understand the best way to drive the best decision making as a school for a district. And those decisions that parents make can often be made as we interact and interface more, helping each other all around the district as parents of these children, as role models.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We'll move to Justin.
Yeah, I just want to first start off by saying there's a reason there's declining enrollment at South. It's because the attendance zone hasn't changed. You know, the attendance zones are set up for Central to be overcrowded and South to be underutilized. And I'm the only candidate, shown by in our lightning round earlier. I'm the only candidate here in favor of changing those boundaries to stop South from becoming underutilized. In terms of healing tensions between the two schools, I would just say stop using fear to pass bad ideas. I'm not denying the need for school improvements, but I object on the process that it was passed.
Thank you so much, Justin. We'll move to TJ.
I think I'll echo what's been shared, but I think the community piece. I think while we are two schools, we're one community. And I think we have to model that as parents, community leaders, as well as for our students. I think we have to be the example of what unity looks like for them. We can't go back and redo, unringing the bell of all the tensions and chaos that may have come from that. But what we can do is start to bridge the gap and start to have meaningful conversations, restore relationships, show our students that even though we disagree maybe on particular issues, we can come together and unify and move forward.
Thank you so much, TJ. We'll move to Peggy next.
Thank you. So, in my opinion, the referendum was really the first bond offering since Hinsdale South was built. So it was a very necessary thing to bring our buildings up to code and up to the proper standards for our district. I agree, we need to continue to work together and to collaborate as a district, as a whole community together. I did note from the CASARTA report that was commissioned back in 2015, that they have fairly accurately predicted the enrollment at Hinsdale Central and at Hinsdale South. So I find that somewhat interesting at that point, that it's not necessarily a declining enrollment, and it looks like it will continue at the pace that it is to hold steady. We do need to understand the root cause of any concerns.
Thank you so much, Peggy. We'll move on to Debbie Leventhal. If you could unmute yourself, Debbie. There you go.
Thank you. In the last few months, I've had a chance to talk to parents from South and meet with the principal from South. And I think there's more that unites us than divides us. So I think that communication is where it begins, and realizing that we have more in common as parents of current or future students. I think the other thing we need to look at is when we take a commitment to make sure that everybody is getting what they need to succeed and for their own students to succeed, a lot of those barriers break down, and that we're looking at this as meeting the needs of all district students and not just Central not just South, not just Transition Center.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And now we're going to move to our 8th question, being answered by Justin Barron first. What should a board member do if the board president or a board member takes action without board direction or the board first reaching consensus? What should a board member do if the board president or another board member takes action without board direction or the board first reaching consensus?
I would, just say, as a board, even though we might have disagreements and different beliefs on how we should do things, we should still have to be united as a team. Even though if I am elected to the board, even though I have disagreements with, many of you guys, we have to be a team player. We have to act together as a team. And I would just say that is, completely wrong. And I would address the president to make sure that issue doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Justin. We'll move to TJ next.
I think that if you disagree with something, I think it's a time and a place for everything. I think you want to respond in a cohesive way that doesn't create more discourse and chaos. I would pull the person aside and have a conversation about the whatever the situation was and ensure that they understood my point of view. I would also discuss with some of the other board members their viewpoints to determine if we are in consensus that that decision wasn't in the best interest of both the administration, board, and the community. I think that we have to show ourselves as leaders and lead with grace and try to communicate and understand why decisions or determinations are being made.
Thank you, TJ. We'll move to Peggy. What should a board member do if the board president or a board member takes action without board direction or the board first reaching consensus?
Right. So I believe that the board is there to represent the community, and we would be there to have thoughtful, meaningful communication amongst both the board and with the superintendents. And I think it's an important piece of that communications that needs to take place where it's thoughtful, considerate, and well-spoken. And it's important for a board member to speak up if they are not in agreement and have that dialogue at that time.
Thank you, Peggy. We'll move to Debbie next.
Mitha, could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What should a board member do if the board president or another board member takes action without board direction or the board first reaching consensus?
Well, I'm interpreting this as that the board president is taking an action that hasn't been discussed at the board table as a full board of education. And at that point, if it's something that is going to impact the entire board, there should be discourse and there should be dialogue around this issue, because to allow the board president to take an action that we don't agree with and not say anything, we would be complicit in whatever that action may be. I think, per open governance, we owe it to our community to be having dialogue at the board table and to be communicating with each other, because we are communicating on behalf of the community.
All right, thank you. We'll move to Mark next.
Great, thank you. I would agree with a lot of what Debbie just said, and I would just say it's important to point out that my allegiance, being a board member, is to the community and not the board, to represent the people that elected me. And if there's any issues, if there's anything that I disagree with, I have a responsibility to call that out, as does every other board member. And we can go back a couple of years and look at some of the dysfunction that existed with prior boards and just see how just really kind of toxic that was for the district and how dysfunctional that was. And we don't want that. We need to work in one unit representing the community for the betterment of the schools and the kids.
Thank you, Mark. We'll move to Karen Shannon.
Foremost, I think we need to acknowledge that the decision wasn't made with full board consensus. And then I think you really need to assess what damage was done. And depending on that damage, you then need to make a decision. Did the board member have authority to make a decision? And if not, can the decision be withdrawn or modified? But if the damage isn't so great, I echo what I've heard. We have to show consensus as a board.
Thank you, Karen. We'll move to Marty next.
Yeah, thanks. So I get the question, but the board president is there to do a couple things. Facilitate the meeting is mainly, and there's really only two things a board, as being a board president for 2 years, two things that they can really do without consensus. One, set the agenda, and two, engage a lawyer. So I don't know how a president or an individual board could make a decision that would ever be binding without consensus or a vote. So, and if they did, as you'll learn if you get elected in the first 30 days, I think it's a pretty big violation. So I don't know what this question is referring to, but the board president has no more authority than any other board member.
Thank you, Marty. We'll move to Terry Walker next.
I think that board members should be comfortable expressing their opinion at the time. And if there is a disagreement, or if there's something that someone disagrees with, it needs to be stated, at that particular time, at that meeting, so that it can be addressed at the moment it happened, and not later. And I just think that's a responsibility of the board members to do that, recognizing that that there are perhaps going to be times when people disagree, and but the majority vote will take precedent.
Thank you, Terry. Jeff, you'll be next.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, the board it's often considered to be a thankless job, which I disagree with, because people who serve on the board are not volunteers. They have decided to put their name on the ballot, and to the extent they're elected, their responsibility is to represent the district to the best of their capacity, even if certain viewpoints and board policy don't align with one's own viewpoint. So it goes without saying that if that situation played out that you brought up, I would not stand idle, nor would I allow for it to the extent it played out. My role and responsibility is to represent the district, to drive consensus from the board to best serve all 4,000 kids in the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And we're on our 9th and final question. This question is for TJ Edwards. First, the recently adopted D86 equity statement promises 3 things: equity of opportunity, and equal outcome. Please explain if you do or do not agree with the equity statement as written. I'll repeat, the recently adopted D86 equity statement promises 3 things: equity of opportunity, and equal outcome. Please explain if you do or do not agree with the equity statement as written.
I agree. I think equal means ensuring that each student has the same thing, whereas equity means ensuring that you're looking at it from an individualized approach and understanding that what may work for one student may not work for another student. I think that understanding that it's imperative for us to address our cultural differences, know how students and teachers are both bringing their own particular environments and experiences and lived experiences to the school is important, and for the school district to identify and understand that we have an opportunity to ensure that our students graduate and enter the next phase of their journey being fully educated and understanding college, career, and life readiness. And in order to do that, we need to educate and have these conversations about the difference between what equity brings and what equality brings.
Thank you, TJ. We'll move to Peggy next. The recently adopted D86 equity statement promises 3 things: equity of opportunity, and equal outcome. Please explain if you do or do not agree with the equity statement as written.
Sure. Diversity and equity are sometimes very sensitive subjects. It's important that board members listen, and consider all voices on the topic. District 86 has had a long track record with supporting diversity and inclusion, and in fact, the recent adoption of the equity statement closely aligns with the strategic goals. Both begin with the same mission statement. The mission of Hinsdale Township High School, District 86, is to empower students to pursue their ideal future by acquiring critical skills and knowledge to collaborate, create, and connect with an ever-changing world. I think those are important goals to keep in mind as we discuss the equity statements.
Thank you so much. We'll move to Debbie Leventhal next. Would you like me to repeat the
Read
question?
the equity statement, and I agree with the definition as presented by the district's attorneys at a presentation and then drafted in this statement as providing opportunities for students that may not look the same, but that hopefully help them each achieve their own personal success. And I think we need to reflect on providing resources to ensure that students can achieve their success through this equity lens, which doesn't really support a one-size-fits-all type of curriculum initiative, for all students at both schools and every subject. We really need to be looking at differentiation so that we can better support students that need more support, and we need to be looking at opportunity for more to ensure that we can create equitable communities.
Thank you so much, Debbie. We move to Mark next.
Thank you. I mean, I agree with what's been said, and especially what Debbie just said. I mean, really, to me, it's about opportunities and understanding the needs of all of the students equally, meaning that each student needs to have available to them the tools that they have and the resources that they need to have as fulfilled of a learning process that they possibly have. Again, focusing on the needs of each specific student, not just trying to kind of categorize them into one specific group also, we need to understand the history of where we are as a district as far as how we are, to where we got to where we are today. And we need to be able to address how we can move forward to accomplish what we need to accomplish.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we'll move to Karen Shannon.
I too would agree with much of what's been said. Foremost, we need to empower students to maximize their own achievement through high school. And I think part of the problem here is we approach this with our own lenses of what our backgrounds were. And we need to get better at as a community of listening to each other's experiences. So there's a lot been said recently about the diversity and inclusion training that was provided. I think we could do better. This is really got to be about understanding what each student is experiencing, what their reality is, and helping them achieve their potential.
Thank you, Karen. We'll move to Marty next.
Yeah, thanks. I do support it. I think if you didn't, there would be big concerns. But yeah, we have to give the equal opportunity to everybody. And then the equity piece, you can't have equal opportunity if you're not equitable to everybody. In the outcome. And I think this statement really allows us to give the resources that are needed, but let individuals, and I use individual advancement as I like Mrs. Leventhal's statement of personal success. So I am supportive of this statement, and we can always work to be better at it. But I do like the mission statement.
Thank you, Marty. Terry, we'll have you answer next.
So while I agree in concept with having an equity statement, I'd like to see the definition of equity broadened and the practices broadened to include the explicit goal of meeting each student where they are and helping them reach their highest potential. I feel like the decision to remove the supported courses does not meet students where they are. And I'm anxious to see what specific measures will be used to determine successful implementation across all the goals outlined in the equity statement.
Thank you, Terry. Next, we have Jeff.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. The recently adopted D86 equity statement promises three things: equity of opportunity, equal opportunity, and equal outcome. Please explain if you do or do not agree with the equity statement as written.
Generally speaking, to echo what Terry said, I do agree with the equity statement as written. I do think it needs to be modified to the extent we are removing certain classes that certain students need for support. District 86 is a tremendously diverse educational, has a tremendous diversity of student population. P-track and 20% on, if you will, the G-track and everything in between. We have to work hard to support all strata of the student body. And I think that modification would be appropriate to best support a particular contingent within it. But otherwise, I do believe in an attempt to maximize those equal outcomes, we do need to have this critical statement.
Thank you, Jeff. And last to answer this last question is Justin Barron.
Yes, thank you. I think it was great that we were able to come together and come up with this equity statement. I'm in full support of it, but I think the board and the community, we have to ensure there are equity between the way we treat both South and Central. There are huge differences in the population, the way the board treats them, the way the communities are. South, for example, is 57.3% white, 17% African American, while Central is 68% white and only 2.2% African American. And I think we should really work to hammer out those differences between the schools.
Thank you so much, Justin. Well, this concludes our question and answer portion of the event. I thank you all for your stamina and endurance and making it through 9 questions through all the candidates. And thank you for your really thoughtful responses. We will now move to our candidate closing statement. Each candidate has 90 seconds to give their closing statement. They will be given a 10-second warning. And at the end of time, we will mute and move on to the next candidate. We will be starting in reverse alphabetical order. So this closing statement session will begin with Jeff Waters first. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for attending and certainly for those hosting this particular event. I did want to remind voters, the reason why I'm voting, it beckons back to referendum days we were discussing recently. I recall tremendous unity and helped myself quite a bit to drive that cohesion and unity amongst the district. Other committee members from the north and the south part of the district at Central and South put on tremendous events for kids to go canvassing as well, together from both schools and all around the district. And I want to take a little piece of that from a diplomacy standpoint that I have championed to bring that to the board to make sure we can drive optimal decisions as a community for these 2 schools, as we are one district and we have to best provide opportunities for all 4,000 kids in the district. I decided to run explicitly over the summer. A lot of parents who were quite concerned about the remote platform say it was June or July relative to COVID or perhaps broken leg days or snow days in the future. We interfaced with a board member who had us on a conference call with D86 IT, and nothing came of it in terms of maximizing that platform. COVID is part of sitting on a board, even though we're not seated until April and May. To the extent we had that platform, things could be different. To the extent we choose and should choose, perhaps even earlier than the fall, to get back into the building or full-time for full-time instruction is important. But to do that, we have to drive those surveys to the families, and we have to work together as a community within the 7-member board.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Next, we'll have Terry Walker giving her closing statements.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in this event. There are 2 things that I want you to remember about me, and those are accountability and transparency. If elected, I will be accountable to you as constituents, and I want you to know that there will be transparency with the board decisions that impact all students within the district. I will place an emphasis on creating more opportunities for discussion where we can share ideas and reach common ground, and provide more opportunities, curriculum opportunities for students across the district. As a parent of a current and future D86 student, I would welcome the opportunity to serve the community and advance the district forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. We'll move to Marty Turek for his closing statement.
Thanks, and really appreciate this forum and appreciate volunteering for these schools for the last 10 years. And what I have in mind is a few things in a closing statement. One is I want to bring fiscal responsibility always to the community. And I never forget the individuals, like I said in the opening statement, that don't use the asset of District 86. It's a majority of people. We're stewards of their dollars too. I will always bring academic excellence and student safety in mind, and employee safety in mind when we're thinking about what we're doing. And I bring experience and continuity during a time where there's a lot of very, very complicated things in District 86, like the referendum spend, the curriculum changes, and very complicated is the student reentry. So I hope you take my experience and support continuity, and I can earn your vote on April 6th at the ballot. So thank you, and thank you, Mitha, for hosting this.
So much, Marty. Next, we'll move to Karen Shannon. Oh, one more time.
Thank you. I want to admit that I am a scientist and a nerd first, and I know that I can appear very data-driven and logical. And I want to assure this community that I also have ears to listen to community input and a heart for students. If elected, I would work to ensure that all our students at both schools, at all learning levels, have curriculum choices that would enable them to realize their potential. So thank you again for organizing this event, and thank you to all the participants.
Thank you so much, Karen. We'll move now to Mark Pino for his closing statement.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the getting everybody together today and for pulling all this together. In my closing statements, I just want to kind of just, again, reinforce the reasons why I'm running for the board. And I think with my background as far as what I can do, as we discussed earlier, again, number one, to me, job one has to be in working and getting the children back in school safely. I would really like to work on working with the administration, within the community to make that happen. I see what the effect that that's having on everybody, as we've discussed, and that to me, that has to be our top priority. The other thing that I'd really like to do is, again, using my finance background, I'd like to ensure that we have a data-driven approach to follow all curriculum changes and refinements going forward. So we have a very formal model as far as how we're evaluating, what changes are being made, the reasons behind those changes, the evaluation and decision-making process around that. So I'd like a very structured and informal process around that. I'd also like us to, looking at the strategic plan that we put in place a number of years ago, a lot of the measures need to be more quantifiable. I'd like to see the district put together some more quantifiable measures related to each of those strategies, so we can actually start measuring those, looking at district performance and trying to drive that going forward. The other thing is the transparency of the board. We need to do a better job of partnering with the community and bringing the community into the process and the decision-making process of the board. And I commit to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Now we'll move to Debbie Leventhal for her closing statement.
I want to thank Mitha and the independent voters for providing this opportunity, and my fellow candidates for participating. In closing, as a district, we have complex challenges ahead. The most pressing is returning our students to school as soon as is safely possible. Post-pandemic, we will face learning gaps, and for some students, social emotional impacts. And my background as a professional educator makes me uniquely qualified to support and hold the administration responsible for identifying those gaps in learning and setting an expectation for closing them. Additionally, if elected, I will honor the foundational imperative of compliance with the Open Meetings Act and work to ensure the implementation of value-proven, data-driven curriculum development and evolution. I will champion equity with the goal of meeting each student where they are at while getting them what they need to succeed, not only by improving of one-size-fits-all quick fixes, but instead by allocating resources where they are needed most so our students can achieve optimal growth, opportunity, advancement, and success. Now more than ever, we need kind, empathic, approachable, humble, and open-minded board members who will think critically, value engagement, and hold themselves and district leaders accountable for our future success. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Next, we have Peggy James with her closing statement.
Thank you to the independent voters for this forum. I am humbled and honored by this opportunity, if elected, to serve our community. Having been a District 86 parent for 5 years and a community member for 17, I represent the community's voice and can help address the challenges facing D86. I will bring a fresh perspective that will encourage community engagement and transparency. My top priorities: number 1, a safe, full-time, 100% in-person reopening of our schools with an optimal learning platform for those who need continued remote learning, and then addressing any educational, social, and emotional gaps created by our part-time instruction model. Number 2, academic excellence. We need to maintain the academic standards at District 86, and I will revisit the recent board decisions changing the math and science programs and options available at both schools. Number 3, board governance and engagement. I believe full transparency and stakeholder communication are a must. And number 4, finally, applying data-driven, student-centered decision-making for all issues facing the district. I hope to earn your vote and ask that you cast your ballot for Peggy on April 6th. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Next, we have TJ Edwards with her closing statement.
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to spend time answering questions regarding the priorities of our district. I think the pandemic has truly tested our resolve, but I'm confident we will emerge from this stronger than we ever were before. I think the passion and resources of the community is truly one of our greatest strengths. I think that passion ensures that D86 remains a top performing district. I promise to work collaboratively with the community and the district and the administration to ensure the same. I promise to keep listening, and I appreciate the different perspectives and consider them as I weigh the decisions I need to make. In my experience working for a non-for-profit in Chicago, I focused on community engagement and partnership. I have used these skills to drive successful outcomes. I have interacted with donors and community leaders and assisted the leadership in determining strategic ways to provide resources to the families we served. If elected, I will continue to explore opportunities for open communication and community engagement. We know not everyone is going to agree with every decision made by the district. However, everyone should understand how and why the decisions are being made. I will support the ongoing facilities improvement, partner with the district to address our student gaps, and find areas to provide the emotional support necessary for our students to transition back to a normal environment. We are fortunate to have incredible teaching staff that continue to make our students a priority. I promise to be transparent, reliable, and create unity for us all. Please vote for Tamakia Edwards on April 6th, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, TJ. And last, we have Justin Barron with his closing statement.
I would just first like to thank you, Mitha, and independent voters for District 86 for hosting this event. You know, all the candidates and the viewers who were able to take time out of their day to come watch us and later on YouTube. I would also like to thank my family and my friends, especially my friend Jeremy, for doing lots of research and helping me get to where I am today, speaking with all of you right now. And finally, I would just say, even though I'm a lot younger, I am a product of District 86, and the teachers do great work, and I want to be there to support them and continue the work of the school board. And I would just, vote for me April 6th.
Thank you so much, Justin. Well, this has been a very informative and engaging event. Again, as I said earlier, I really thank the 9 candidates who participated today and wish all 10 candidates on behalf of independent voters for D86 much luck in their campaign. We hope that the viewers had an opportunity to learn about the candidates running and the issues that face D86. The event will be available for future viewing on YouTube as well as on Facebook. A reminder to all voters, early voting does begin on Friday, February 25th. It will continue until April 5th, and in-person voting on voting day is April 6th. You can check out the DuPage and Cook County Election Commission sites for more information. As well, I believe all of our candidates have a social media presence, either on Facebook or with their own website. So please take an opportunity to engage with them on questions or concerns that you have facing D86 to learn more about them. We wish you all much success and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.